Hi everyone, this is Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager for the City of Lawrence. We were just waiting to get everyone in the meeting, but I believe we are all here now. Let's see, you'll have to deal with me for a little bit until we get a new chair elected. So we'll start out this meeting by having Serena read some information for us all and follow that up with a roll call of members.
Okay. Good evening, or afternoon. I guess it's afternoon. My name is Serena Pearson, and I'm a marketing specialist with Lawrence Transit. And along with me here is Adam Weigel, and he's the Transit and Parking Manager. And we will work together to facilitate the meeting proceedings. This meeting is being recorded and broadcast on the city's YouTube channel and public access channel, cable channel 25. The meeting is being recorded and broadcast on the city's YouTube channel and public access channel 25. I already said that. During the meeting, when you're not participating, please mute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon found on the lower left-hand side of the Zoom menu next to the video icon. When you are muted, a red line will appear over the icon. Muting your microphone during the meeting will make it easier for everyone to hear. You will just have to remember to unmute it if and when you want to speak. In some cases, we may mute or unmute people as needed to minimize distractions during the meeting. Please remember to state your name and title for the benefit of those listening remotely. You can turn your video on and off by clicking on the video icon on the menu. For the purposes of this public meeting, please keep your video on when you are participating in the meeting. When you are not participating, it's okay to turn your video off. Just remember to turn your video back on when you're speaking. If you're participating by phone, you can click *6 to unmute your phone. For those using Zoom, somewhere on your screen you will see a choice to toggle between speaker and gallery view. Speaker view shows the active speaker, gallery view tiles all of the meeting participants. So now what I'm going to do is go through the roll call. So if you want to just say here, whatever, when I call your name. We have some new members, so Freddie Gibb. Are you here?
Here. I'm here.
Oh, awesome. Lance Fahey is here in person. Hi. Logan Stewart. Hello? I think I see him there. Okay. I'm not sure, but I see you there.
Sorry, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm on data. My internet's very poor at the moment.
Oh, okay. Okay. Awesome. You're here. Let's see. August Rudisell.
I'm here. I'm present.
Good deal. Okay. Mike Wazakowski.
Here.
Nick Kuzmiak.
Here.
Alan Ackland.
Here.
Natalie Yoza.
Here.
And Bill Wilson.
Here.
Bill, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. All right. So that's everyone.
Okay, Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. The second item on our agenda is public comment. I don't believe we've received any written public comment prior to the meeting. There's no one here with us. I do see JT Thornburg on the line, so just want to check and see if that perhaps is a member of the public who had any general public comment, or if you wanted to speak to one of the agenda items. Did JT Thornburg have anything to share with us for general public comment, or identify which of the agenda items you'd like to speak to? Oh, I see a message in the chat for no.
No.
So,
Okay.
We'll let us know if you hear something throughout the meeting that you'd like to provide public comment for. So moving on to the third item on our agenda, to approve the December 14th, 2020 minutes. Do we have any discussion or corrections that need to be made to those minutes? And if not, we'll take a motion for approval.
I would motion that we approve the December minutes.
Second. It's been motioned by Nick, seconded by Lance, and I'll have Serena do a roll call vote.
All right.
If you were not with us in December of last year, you can feel free to abstain from this vote.
All right. Just going through the list. Freddie Gibb.
I'm gonna abstain.
Abstain. Yeah. Lance.
I approve.
Logan Stewart.
I abstain.
August Rudisell.
I'll abstain as well.
Abstain, yeah.
I'll abstain.
Yeah. Mike Wasikowski.
Approve.
Nick Kuzmiak.
Approve.
Alan Ackland.
Approve.
Natalie Yoza.
Approve.
Bill Wilson.
Approve.
Okay, this is Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. And if my math is right, I think I heard 6 approves and 3 abstains. So that motion passes. We'll move into our agenda items for the evening and wanted to begin by introducing a few new members that we have. So we have with us tonight August Rudisell and Freddie Gipp and Logan Stewart. And I just wanted to go one by one with each of you. If you just want to give maybe a very brief introduction to yourself, just so the group knows a little bit about you, that would be helpful, just knowing what perspectives we have on our committee. So I'll just go in the order of people I see on my screen. So August, do you want to start us off?
Sure thing. My name is August Rudisell. I am new to the committee. I moved to Lawrence 19 years ago this month. Adam and I figured out. I have been a solid daily writer of the Lawrence transit system for about 6 years, up until about a year ago. So I feel very confident in my knowledge of the transit system. I really, really appreciate being on this board because I think it's a very valuable resource for our citizens. Thank you.
Thank August. Happy to have you. All right, Freddie, you want to give us a couple minutes about yourself?
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Freddie Gipp. I born and raised here in Lawrence, Kansas. I'm 27 years old. Graduated in KU from 2016. I'm an enrolled member of the Apache Tribe of Oklahoma, Native American, and family has a long history of working at Haskell. And so for me, I personally rode the bus a lot my freshman year in college. Used it throughout my entire year in college, obviously, but my first year in particular, because I lived at home my first semester, and so it was really cool to see that perspective. And then yeah, lifelong resident here, really excited to serve, and really looking forward to being a part of the conversations that will help enhance Lawrence Transit. Thank you.
Thanks, Freddie. Okay, Logan, talk a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, hi everyone. Like I said, sorry about my internet today. I am actually from Iowa City, Iowa, but I'm a senior at the University of Kansas. And I'm actually employed as the student transit coordinator. So I work with both the University of Kansas and the City of Lawrence buses and help run Safe Ride and JLIF for the university as well. I'm excited to kind of share a university perspective here and to give some of the students of KU some representation. And as I know, there are a lot of students that regularly ride the buses. So I'm excited to be here. Thank you, guys.
All right, well, thank you all, for each of those new members. Just really excited to have each of your unique perspectives in our group and looking forward to the discussions we'll have this year. So with that said, we'll move on to agenda item number 2, which is chair and vice chair elections. So we'll start this out just by giving a brief overview of what that means. Really, the responsibilities are to walk us through our agenda each month. I have been meeting or emailing with the chair and vice chair, usually a couple weeks before our meetings, just to put together the agenda and make sure the items are what members want to talk about, touch on any maybe unexpected updates that we need to add to that. So there's probably maybe 30 minutes to an hour of work looking at agendas in addition to the meetings. So those are the primary responsibilities. We would ask you as you walk through the meeting to just make sure there's space and time for members to voice their opinion, obviously checking at each agenda item if we have any public comment, but staff that's here is more than happy to help you walk through Robert's rules and keep us moving, that sort of thing. So at this time, I would open up if anyone has other questions about duties or concerns about it, or if you would like to make a self-nomination or nominate one of your fellow committee members. And we'll probably start with chair. We'll just focus on chair for now, and then we'll move on to vice chair.
This is Mike Wazakowski, PTAC member. Are there any rules in terms of gender balance? Like if we have a male for chair, we have to have a female for vice chair or vice versa?
This is Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. I don't believe there's any of that guidance in our bylaws.
This is August, PTAC member. I just have two questions. Who are the current chair and vice chair, and what's the length of term?
Good questions. Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. So Heather Tice was our chair up through last meeting. She has reached the end of her term limit, so she's no longer with us. Lance Fay, here in the room with us, has been the vice chair. And these elections are held once per year. So these are annual elections.
Nick Kuzmiak, PTAC member. Personally, I would nominate Lance Fahey to serve as chair if you're willing to accept the nomination. As a member of the MMTC Multimodal Transportation Commission, I value your input into our sphere of influence as well. And I think having you as the chair could be good to kind of continue that conversation. So that's just my 2 cents.
Lance Fay, Vice Chair, PTAC. I was kind of wanting to stay as Vice Chair if you would have me as that. So I'm not sure how to answer the nomination for chair.
I can withdraw the nomination, I suppose.
Or you can reject it.
Yeah, I think you're free to say yes or no, really.
I guess, is there somebody else that we could nominate for chair? Then I would nominate myself for vice chair. If that doesn't work well, then we could maybe revisit the subject. But I would like to decline at this point.
Well, I was also thinking Mike would maybe make a good fit as chair. You're a pretty active member of discussions here, and I know you're obviously familiar with Robert's rules, so maybe I will, and then in that case, change my nomination to Mike Wasakowski as chair.
This is Mike Wazakowski. I'll accept, and I'll note that I am familiar with Robert's rules, but I need to pick up my book from the Raven sometime this week to really know it.
It's like you were planning this.
Completely unrelated, actually, but yes.
This is Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. We've had a nomination for Mike and he accepted. Are there any competitors in the field? Or should we take a roll vote for this? All right. We'll let the group off the hook. And so Nick's nominated Mike, he's accepted. I suppose we'll take a roll call vote.
Okay.
For Mike as chair.
All right, this is Serena Pearson, Lawrence Transit. I'm just going to go through the list again. Freddie Gibb,
Yay.
Yay. Okay. Lance Fahey,
Yes. Yeah.
Logan Stewart,
Yay.
August Rudisell,
Yay.
Mike Wazkowski,
I'll abstain for right now unless my vote is needed to get me the win.
sure. And Nick Kuzmiak,
Yay.
Alan Eklund,
Yay.
Natalie Oza,
Yes.
and Bill Wilson.
Yes.
Okay. So that's
Okay.
8 yes and 1 abstain.
All right, thank you all for that. Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. Technically, Mike, I hand it over to you for the to administer the vice chair elections. Would you like me to continue or you want to step in?
You can go ahead and continue for now.
Okay, so we'll put out a call for self-nominations or nominating your colleagues for the vice chair position.
Lance Fay, Vice Chair. I'll nominate myself to continue as Vice Chair.
Okay, Lance has nominated himself. Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. I'll leave the floor open for just a minute to see if anyone else is interested. Okay, so Lance nominated himself. I assume he accepts that self-nomination. So Serena, I'll move to you for a roll call vote.
Have a second or anything? No, it's not.
We need a second, I'll provide it.
Sorry. Thank you, Mike.
Mike, okay.
I'll move
All
for a
right.
roll call vote.
I will go through the list again. This is Serena Pearson, Lawrence Transit. This is for Lance as our vice chair. Freddie Gibb.
Yay.
Lance. Logan Stewart.
Yay.
August Rudisell.
Yes.
Mike Wazakowski.
Yay.
Nick Kuzmiak.
Yay.
Alan Ackland.
Yay.
Natalie Oza.
Yes.
Bill Wilson.
Yes.
Okay. That's 9. So everybody.
Okay. This is Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. Mike, for the sake of muscle memory, I'm going to turn it over to you for the next couple of items. You're pretty much giving it back to me. So this is we'll ease into it here.
Sounds great. So next item on the agenda for today is the Route Redesign Study Steering Committee. And I believe that there is an attachment on the agenda that we should review at this time as well.
This is Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. So the attachment on the agenda, as the current committee members, it needs a little bit of updating. We've had a couple of new slots filled that are currently listed as TBD in there. So one of our large projects for this year is a route redesign study, consultant-led. So we have done some of that work in the fall of 2020, had a survey go out. There is an additional survey out currently that closes at the end of this week, looking at different route concepts. That work was all put together by a group of KU urban planning students. And all that information and feedback that we heard from the community will feed into, will help inform this route redesign study in 2021. This work will look at traditional fixed routes. It'll look at other innovative ways we might deliver transit service, things like microtransit zones and subsidizing of ride hailing, perhaps. So we're going to look at a lot of different options. This study is in parallel to us planning for the multimodal transfer facility at Bob Billingson Crestline. that will necessitate some route changes. So the purpose of this group is really to guide our public outreach efforts this year to make sure we're reaching the different groups and people that we need to reach, as well as reviewing deliverables from the consultant that we'll be working with. That consultant has not yet been chosen. Our RFP, our request for proposals, closes this Friday. So we'll get a staff team together to review that and make a selection. It's anticipated that the first meeting of this group will probably, at the earliest, be February. We're probably looking at monthly meetings. There's a chance if workload picks up and we need to hit deadlines that those meetings might go to bi-weekly for a particular deliverable need, but we really anticipate it just being monthly. So as you can see in the list, we've got it somewhat separated into what we're calling the steering committee members. There's also a subset staff team that has folks from a lot of different departments and just provide us different perspective that will really be useful as we look at how transit routes impact different people here in Lawrence. So what we're looking for out of this group is a designee as well as an alternate. We want to make sure that if the designee, the person out of PTAC could not make one of the meetings, that we'd at least have someone there from this group. With that said, these meetings will also be pretty open door. I mean, if 5 of you want to attend a steering committee, you're welcome to do so. If we approached some issue where we needed to take a vote or get a kind of specific perspective from our different steering committee members, the idea is we don't just have a stacked deck where any one group has a lot more influence over our steering committee decisions. So if we got to that type of situation, the designee or the alternate, if they were there, would provide PTAC's input under those circumstances. So I'm happy to take any other questions about what it would mean to be a part of this group. Or again, if you would like to nominate yourself or someone else to be designee or alternate, we would take that as well.
Nick Kuzmiak, PTAC member. I just want to throw it out there just in case anybody's thinking this. For the new folks on the committee, I would definitely encourage you to volunteer for something like this. If you were worried that you're maybe too new for chair, vice chair, you're definitely not too new for something like this. I think as long as you have some transit experience, either theoretical or lived experience, this is a pretty good opportunity. So I would definitely encourage one of y'all to maybe put your name in the hat.
August Rudiso, PTAC member. Yeah, Nick beat me to it. I would like to volunteer as a designee for this.
Okay, I appreciate that, August. Anyone else have interest?
I'll throw interest in there too. This is Freddie Gipp here, PTAC member. I think it is a quintessential opportunity in order to really supplement the partnership that could elevate the transportation for Haskell students too. So whether that's serving as designated member or alternate, I'm here for the cause.
All right, that's great. Anyone else? And keeping in mind, like I said, that not being one of these two positions doesn't preclude you from joining the meeting and listening in and participating if you'd like to. So with that said, I think we, since I heard August 1st and Freddie 2nd, I suppose I would say that August is probably the designee and Freddie the alternate, and I guess encourage you both to attend those meetings. It doesn't have to be just one of you. I don't know, Mike, if we want to probably wanting to take a motion second and vote on
Yes,
this.
let's do a formal motion. Does anyone want to approve or move to approve August as the designee and Freddie's the alternate?
Lance Fay, Vice Chair, I'll move that we approve August and Freddie.
Natalie Yoza, I second.
Thank you, Lance and Natalie. Serena, can you go through roll call and
Yes.
take the vote results?
All right, this is Serena Pearson, Lawrence Transit. Went through the list. Freddie Gibb,
Vote yay.
Lance,
Yes.
Logan Stewart,
Yes.
August Rudisell.
I vote yay.
Yay. Mike Wazakowski,
Yay.
Nick Kuzmiak,
Yay.
Ellen Ackland,
Yay.
Natalie Oza,
Yes.
and Bill Wilson.
Yes.
Awesome. That's 9. Approved it.
Okay, we have a successful motion then. Thank you very much, everyone. And thank you, August and Freddie, for volunteering to join the steering committee. That'll really help us as we advance towards building the transfer hub and mapping out what routes we're going to use after that's established. Next item on the agenda is the Winter Emergency Shelter Pilot Program and transit impacts. Additionally, for this one, there is an attachment which we should view, contribution policy.
Thanks, Mike. This is Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. And okay, before I launch into this, so initially as I was putting this agenda item together, the Winter Shelter Emergency Program that the city is coordinating was really, it presented a few challenges in this contribution policy that we have. As we got into looking at this policy, I think the challenges maybe aren't specific to that winter shelter emergency program. So I'll walk through some of the background and the issues that we're seeing, and I have a few questions that I'm hoping the committee can help us talk through. So give me a minute to share my presentation here. Okay, so this contribution policy that was attached, and I'm sorry that was attached just today, so I don't know how much time you've had to look at it. We'll walk through the background, how it came to be, what some of the components are. There are some winter shelter program specific challenges we're looking at, as well as some others. We'll touch on equitable fare policy as a bigger concept and where the best space might be to have that more full discussion. Got a few potential policy changes we can look at, and then I'm really interested in your thoughts and your guidance in relation to those. So the purpose of the contribution policy, it was first approved by PTAC and the City Commission back in March of 2004. And at that time, or prior to that time, Lawrence Transit staff they'd receive requests from people who were seeking donated fares or free fares for any number of reasons. I think that staff found that pretty challenging to receive kind of individual one-off requests, have to determine if the reason was good enough to provide a free transit fare. And so this policy was born out of that to create some mechanism for organizations to make requests for transit passes and have those decisions rendered by the transit manager, as opposed to whoever on Lawrence Transit staff received that request. Some of the parts of this policy are that there's a contribution limit of 1% of the prior year's fare box revenue. And a single organization can request up to 20% of that limit in a given year in 2 separate requests. Do 2 separate requests of 10% of that policy. So I laid out an example here of what it's going to look like for this year. So our 2020 fare box revenue was far down from where it normally is, but it was just over $250,000. That would set our total contribution limit to $2,500. And you see the agency limits listed there. So an agency can request up to $250 worth of passes at a time. And they can do that up to twice per year. So continuing with some of the other parameters of this policy, it is currently laid out as first come, first serve. And who can apply for these free passes is that eligibility is very broad. So it can't be an individual, can't just be a single person, but it can be any group, any agency, association, organization that comes forth with the request. They can't ask us to create a new fare type for this request. So taking that last example, they can ask for $250 worth of passes. Those can be single ride tickets, they can be 10 ride punch cards, they can be monthly passes. But the request can't include asking staff to create something brand new, like a 2-week pass or something to that effect. The request has to come to me in writing, so usually sending an email, just describing what fare types they're looking for and how much, and a description of how those fares are planned to be used. So one of the challenges with this that came to light through the Winter Shelter Emergency Program, and just a brief background on that, is there are a number of people in our community who still do not have a place to stay, in particular with lower occupancy limits at the community shelter and fewer opportunities in churches who are trying to limit congregate settings in a time of COVID. So the city has this program for a non-congregate setting where we're able to house about 100 people a night at local hotels through a voucher program. So those hotels are located near transit, but as part of that program, they are wanting to offer passes to people so they can travel to and from throughout the day. So at 100 people a night, if you think about just 2 trips a day, you can see those passes go pretty quickly. In 2020, the limit was $880 worth of passes. We had a much higher fare revenue in 2019 than we did in 2020. So you see in 2021, our allotment's much less. With those 500 total passes that an organization might request this year, through that program, if they're using 200 passes a day, those will go very, very quickly. Some other challenges with the policy is that it's not widely publicized or widely known about. There are staff concerns that if it was more widely known, we would certainly get a lot more requests, and likely would get more requests than our contribution limit, and then have to determine who gets passes, if it's still on first come, first serve, or if there's another way to determine need. wanted to talk through a few different ways in which people have access to free transit fares. So the first few bullets here detail what our contribution policy has looked like the last few years, 2018, 2019, and 2020. You can see that the number of passes given out has fallen well short of that contribution limit, and there's been very few organizations who have requested passes through the contribution policy. 2018, 4 organizations requested in total $534 worth of passes. In 2019, only 1 organization requested through this policy for just $250. And in 2020, we got closer to our limit, but we still have some room there. 5 organizations requested a little north of $3,000. There are also a much larger number of organizations that just purchase bulk passes through us. So you see in 2018, 2019, and 2020, the number of organizations and the dollar amount that that were requested or that were purchased just through our office. Those organizations typically then distribute them to clients or people in the community that need or can't afford transit fare. There is an annual distribution to the Lawrence Shelter of 15,600 single ride tickets. That is an agreement approved through the City Commission, so that that agreement is a little unique. And there is also, the last few years, Salvation Army has applied for social service funding, and out of the general fund has been awarded around $5,000 a year, and then typically uses that to purchase passes and distribute it to people and agencies who need it. So you can see the multiple ways people are coming to transit passes for folks who can't afford them. I do want to set this discussion in context just a little bit. We did, in our RFP for the route redesign study that we'll be doing this year, we did include in that scope of work for the consultants to have us talk through equitable fare policy, including the potential for free fare. And because that will have a direct impact, could have a direct impact on operations. If we were to remain in our budget bubble that we currently have right now and went fare free, that would mean some reduction in service likely. So there's, I think, a much larger discussion to be had around an equitable fare policy and fare free and kind of the spectrum between what we have now and that. I'm not sure we need to have that full discussion here tonight, but we're trying to address some of the acute issues we have with this current contribution policy. So a couple of potential changes we're looking at is just for transparency's sake, making the policy more publicly known. You know, as you saw earlier, there's a much larger number of organizations that apply, or not apply, but just come to us and purchase bulk passes. A lot of those organizations probably serve people that you know, they're providing those passes to on the back end. So with that said, we anticipate, you know, if those organizations knew about this policy, we'd likely have a lot more requests. There's, I think, some concern that if it remains first come, first serve, that we will quickly run out of, you know, we'll quickly hit our limit and not be able to provide passes for requests that might happen throughout the year, that might be a very acute need for a student's car who's broke down, or somebody who is involved with a social service agency that has a very specific need for transit. If we were to give away all our passes, you know, on January 2nd, we wouldn't have the ability to fill that need. So that second bullet speaks to, you know, how we might be able to do that, which would be to reserve a small amount through this contribution policy for those unique uses, and then make the rest available either once a year at the beginning of the year. We could do it a couple times a year, and kind of have a defined time period for agencies to submit requests to us. So there are a number of questions we are hoping that PTAC members have thoughts on, and I'll walk through each of these, but then after that I'm happy to go back through the presentation if you had questions on specific slides, or if we want to take these one by one. But interested in this group's thoughts on how we might make our existing policy known to organizations in Lawrence. I think there's certainly a couple obvious avenues, website and direct outreach, but just thinking about how we might do that. Interested in your thoughts about the first come, first serve component of this policy. Is that the right way to distribute these passes? Are we comfortable with the contribution limits set based on last year's fare box revenues? And what sort of changes might we look to make now, and what should we maybe table towards when we get towards the route redesign study, where we'll have probably a much more robust discussion around equitable fare policy and how that impacts the service that we're able to put out. So I realize that's quite a bit of information. I'm happy to go back through. I think from our perspective, the concern is we're absolutely going to be continuing to receive requests in the very near future. So just trying to understand if we should still just be filling them based on existing policy, or if we should look towards any changes. And with that, I'll probably turn it back over to you all.
It's Mike Wazakowski. Are there any comments on this or questions?
Yes, Vice Chair, I actually have questions. The first thing that comes to my head is what are some of the groups that have requested this in the past, and maybe where is the greatest need? And forgive me if I don't remember the names of some of the social service agencies, but some of the places that do the thrift stores and help people with food bank type things, have they requested in the past? May they not be aware, and should they be contacted? Maybe should we reach out to them? Just kind of looking at where the need for the service would be, need for the free fares would be, and making sure that where it's needed most has a good opportunity to request them. That's my thought.
Yeah, this is Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager, and Lance, you kind of hit it right on. I mean, that's one of our bigger concerns. If you look at, I'll flip back up to let's take 2018 and 2019, because those were a little more normal, typical years than 2020. But even 2020, that the number of bulk passes that were purchased in 2018 and 2019 are around 40,000, and last year was a little over 20,000. So I do think if probably all those organizations are likely to have good arguments for their clients having a need for transit passes. I mean, they're bulk purchasing them to provide them to their clients. Now, obviously, $20,000 and $40,000 is much higher than our contribution limit. So I do think if organizations are more aware of the policy, we'd receive requests that exceeded what we have to offer.
Nick Kuzmiak, PTAC member. I had a couple of comments, including a question first. So Adam, do the agency purchases count towards the fare box recovery that is then calculated for the succeeding year?
Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager, yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. So in that case, if we were down $40,000 worth of agency purchases that were instead going to be requested instead, that could, I guess, kind of severely affect the equation. So $40,000 in 2018 looks like a pretty large percentage of what I assume the Fedbox recovery was. What's a normal year look like? Like 300 to 400? Sorry, 300 to 400,000?
Yeah, so Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. So you can kind of do some math up here in the 2018, 2019, and 2020. So 2019, our Farebox revenues were about 440,000.
Okay, that makes sense. So I had a couple of comments then that are just kind of in general, I guess, answers to your questions. The first one was, instead of calculating the allocated ticket, I guess, amounts based on 1% of the previous year's Farebox recovery, would it be reasonable to maybe switch to a 3-year or 5-year rolling average? I think that would, in the short term, decrease the amount given out because ridership has been rising over the years. But if for something like a 2020, it means that 2021 wouldn't be totally screwed just because of a dip in a single year of ridership. So I would suggest something to kind of moderate the swings in Farebox recovery. The second one is I mean, if it's possible to petition for an increase from 1% to at least 2%, I mean, it's not a lot, but at least it's a doubling of what's available. I don't know where these, I guess, funds would come from. Obviously, they're from the Farebox recovery, but what else is funded by Farebox recovery that would have to be, I guess, reallocated? So that's kind of a concern. On the subject of first come, first serve, coming from a basis of how CDBG funds are allocated, I was wondering if it'd be possible for, I don't know if organizations know well enough their needs in advance of the year to be able to apply on, sort of a similar schedule to as they apply for CDBG funds. But if so, then it could be kind of like how those funds are allocated to neighborhoods, or at least how they used to be, where there's kind of a pot of money that's reserved for that thing, and then it's sort of proportionally allocated equally among them. So I guess for neighborhoods, it's all considered that they're about the same size-ish. So if there's $10,000 for the year and there's 4 neighborhoods, well, each of those are going to get $2,500. It's a lot easier from an administrative standpoint, and it doesn't require a whole lot of time to figure out who needs exactly what. And it may smooth over some nuance that maybe shouldn't be smoothed over, but it is quicker. So I guess how that would maybe work for organizations that are asking for very different amounts of tickets is that, say there's a total of $10,000 available and multiple organizations ask for 20,000. So in that case, each organization would get tickets, but only 50% of what they asked for. Just a thought. It seems equitable, but I know the needs of different organizations are very different, so I don't know if that would necessarily work. And finally, as to the schedule of when this should be changed, I would say as immediate as it can be, simply because of the unique circumstances surrounding the homeless services over the winter. So that's my 2 cents there.
Thanks, Nick. Is there anyone else?
Yeah, this is Natalie Yoza, PTAC member. And I just have some general thoughts. I regret not having solutions, but I agree with your concerns about not publicizing the availability. I think that to be equitable and transparent, it's better to let everybody know that the service exists, and that concern about how to manage it shouldn't prevent that transparency. And I think when I read the policy that you sent out today, what I was looking for was a better definition of what the objective is for the program, so that you could then better define who best meets those objectives. And I know it creates more work as you move from an automatic system to trying to vet who should receive it. But I think that's the more sort of fair approach to how to handle it. And I saw one bullet point that was talking about PTAC sort of review of it. And I haven't read the charter in a while, but I don't remember us being conferred with any sort of authority that would allow us to do that. And so it would seem that you might have to go amend the PTAC charter before. But it's a tricky thing when you have something that works from administrative burden standpoint. It's always hard to make adjustments that add to that burden. But as the city, I think it is important to let folks know that it's available. So those are my thoughts. Thanks.
Is there anyone else with comments?
Yeah, this is Bill Wilson, PTAC Advisory. This backs up maybe a little bit, Adam. I'm just curious, since revenue that primarily funds the entire system is tax-based, is there liberty to have discretion on making such contributions?
So Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. That's a good question. I think since this policy initially was approved by, well, recommended by PTAC to the City Commission and they approved it, I think any changes to the policy would need to go along the same route. And partly to that end, because decisions made here will affect the money that we have to provide service. So yeah, I don't think from just like a staff administrative level that we would make changes to contribution limits or that sort of thing without running it through that chain of approval. Does that get at your question, Bill, or were you asking something slightly different?
No, that's fine. I think even as far as, I didn't know how it was initially approved. If that, I'm assuming, went through the proper vetting, but certainly to alter it, it seemed like it would require that too. I just didn't know, since it came from sales tax basis, I didn't know if there was even the opportunity to have discretion to give away that. Thank you. That's it. Thanks.
Adam Weigel, Transit Manager. That's a unique, yeah, it's a little unique because this farebox revenue is people giving us money when they ride the bus. So that's not part of the tax-based money that we use. It does definitely impact our bottom line. But I think you're right that, I mean, just prudent use of funds to provide a city service, we would want the right approvals. And I think, from my perspective, I think we'd want PTAC recommendation that would go to City Commission, who would approve the policy change, so that there was transparency in that approval process.
Lance Fay, Vice Chair. There's a couple of things that keep coming to my mind on this, and that kind of building on what I'd mentioned earlier, about the next 5 to 6 months are going to be extremely hard times for a lot of people. And so what we have existing now and in its existing policy could very well be utilized, and there may be demand for even more, but in the interest of getting the benefit of the service to the people that need it, it would be best, I think, to go with what we have for now. And again, I ask, where is this most needed? Where are the people that would be, what organizations or agencies would most need these things? And that's sort of the question in my mind, because I know there's the need out there. It's just a matter of where it is. And should we find that there's a need for more, and that times continue to be hard, then I would think that at that time we could work with City Commission and other entities involved to see what can be done. The other thing is that there was a mention in here about discussing or whether to table discussion on fare changes or free fare. It does come up. I was asked about it. I would say at this time should be tabled. Just let's focus on the immediate need for things right now and get through a rather difficult time, and then have a little more of a cognizant approach to this moving forward.
August Rudiso, PTAC member. Lance was a good segue, so I decided to jump in. I've worked for a nonprofit for a little over 2.5 years now, and I'm just curious the question is, how do we make existing policy known to organizations? What is the current method for disseminating the knowledge that there are bus passes out there? Because my organization, it's our understanding that we have to go through Salvation Army to get them. And so I didn't know how we are communicating this to the organizations in town currently.
Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. I think it has been very much in the context of discussion. I don't think there's been a focused, open way in which we've shared it with all organizations. So I mean, that was one of the things that stuck out as that we need to resolve probably as quickly as we can. Like I showed in this slide, there are, to your point, August, there's all these different ways that organizations can come to access transit passes. And I don't know that all organizations know about all those methods.
Are there any other questions from, I see Alan speaking. I didn't hear you.
Yes, Al Ackman, PTAC member. I'm going to have to head out here, so I apologize, and I'll catch you all next month.
Is there any other, are there any other comments or questions from PTAC members?
This is Freddie Gipp here, PTAC member. I have a question in regards to the people who can request. If you go back to the one where it says not for the individual, is that for just like, I understand organizations, agencies, and then like, or anything else, but then it was like not available to individuals. Is that individuals and businesses?
Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. I think the intent of that part of the policy is to not receive individual person's requests, someone walking into our office or emailing for kind of these very unique issues. The intent was to have an organization that might serve multiple people making the request. To your question about what about a business, I think there's probably flexibility and ambiguity in the policy for us to consider a request from a business. It would depend on maybe how acute the request was. I don't think the policy makes it exceedingly clear, exactly who can make the requests other than agencies, organizations, not individuals.
Lance Fay, Vice Chair. Let me see if I am getting this kind of right here. So let's say that I'm the coordinator for the Social Service League, and I'd like to, for the Social Service League, request some passes that people that are having trouble with transportation, that as as a social service agency, we could give out. Is that kind of the idea, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then what about places like the DARE or the DECA houses? Would that also apply, or would they have to go through another agency?
I think the way the policy is spelled out leaves a lot of room for if an agency or organization reaches out to me and in a written form provides explanation of why they need these passes, how they will be used, the policy says we should fulfill that request. So I think those agencies could also take advantage of this contribution policy based on the way it's written.
And then Lance, Vice Chair, again here, do we need to take an action on this of some way, to whether to keep it as it is, or is this an action item sort of thing?
Well, go
This is
ahead.
Mike Wazakowski. I don't think we need to take action necessarily unless someone wants to adjust the policy at this time. I mean, as the last question that we're seeing, it says that there's going to be a fair policy discussion as part of the route redesign study. So if we're good with what we have now, then we don't have to do anything.
And Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. The one thing I might ask for a little bit of clarity on, I think I'm hearing pretty clearly that we need to, for transparency's sake, we need to find some ways to make the policy known to organizations. I think we can do that through, direct outreach to the ones that have purchased from us before. I think we could put it on our website. As far as, the next step is, I think we absolutely would anticipate a higher number of requests than we have the capacity to fill. So should we still fill those requests on a first come, first served basis? To Lance's earlier point about, trying to get out help that we can get out now, a policy change will take a little time, right? I mean, you'll provide some guidance to us. We'll craft some changes to the policy. You'll need to review that, recommend it to the city commission, who would then approve it. So policy will take a little time, but I think that is a concern from staff, and just make sure we know that we should go ahead and fulfill requests on a first come, first served basis as written.
Nick Kuzmiak, PTAC member. Is there any concern that keeping, allocations on a first come, first served basis tends to favor organizations who are better organized versus organizations that may be kind of in dire straits from an organizational perspective, but still really need the help? Whereas if there was, say, a deadline that everybody could meet, and then passes could be metered out accordingly, once the overall need is known, would that be more fair to organizations that don't have the organizational capacity to kind of get past the finish line first?
Nick, do you want me to take a crack at that, or you want to hear what your colleagues have to say?
Either or, really. I guess it'd be a question for people who are involved in nonprofits and other social service agencies. I mean, are there ones that, either aren't aware of this program or would be much slower to respond simply because there might be a single person running the whole show? I guess, Adam, do you want to take a crack at it first?
Well, Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. The one thing that, under the circumstance that we set kind of a defined timeline for requests to come in and then we evaluate them, that would require policy change. That's not the way our policy is written out. I don't have a way of determining who would get what or how we would meter those passes out. Our policy right now is first come, first serve. So that's the policy challenge with that. I do think there's some fairness in doing it that way, based on some of the things you said, but I don't think we could do that with our existing policy.
And I don't know if I maybe heard the other the rest of the discussion correctly, but aren't we maybe making recommendations on what could be changed about the policy in the near term? I mean, I may have totally missed that.
This is Mike Wazakowski. Yeah, I mean, if we want to make a recommendation to the city commission to adjust this policy, this is the time to do it. This will get us in as early as possible to have something appear on city commission agenda.
I think in that case, I'd like to hear from anybody who is involved in the kind of nonprofit or social service agency that would be involved in making a request like this, because I'd be curious to see if there's actually a concern of, big organizations get the bite first, or if it's actually not a problem. August, are you involved with nonprofit? I'm not sure I quite caught your background.
I am, yeah. I work for a nonprofit here in North Lawrence at the Ballard Center, and that was one of my concerns. That was one of my concerns, is that how should staff make existing policy known? I've worked here 2 years, and our understanding is that we have a contact at Salvation Army. I went and got a stack of 200 passes probably 5 or 6 months ago, and she said, and I was like, if I run out of these, how do I get more? And she's like, well, you just call me. And so, if I leave this organization, we have to start all over with who's the contact and how does my organization figure out how to get passes. But we're still going through a third agency, when I'm learning tonight that I could have been contacting Adam or the Transit Authority directly to request my own passes, which was interesting to me. I didn't know that.
So I guess my follow-up question is, if things were to change around and there were to be kind of an annual or even quarterly deadline for which you could apply for an allocation of passes, would that be possible? I mean, is it possible to know ahead of time for the upcoming year how many passes you might need based on prior need?
I don't think there's a way to anticipate it. I think we would blankly take what we were allotted just because we do use them. Even if we don't use them all in the quarter or the time frame we designate, we would still use them. And it would be something, to your question, yeah, it's something we could easily do, that once a quarter, myself or our family stabilization coordinator contacts Transit Authority and requests our allotment for that time segment, and just keep doing that on the regular basis. I think most nonprofits could do that because they are very, very handy, and our clients benefit from them quite a bit.
Okay, so I guess in that case, the final conclusive question here is, do you think that making this kind of periodic deadline would be better than the current idea of first come, first serve, or do you think it wouldn't be a huge improvement?
Is that a question for me?
That's for August.
Yeah, and yeah, this is August. I was just trying to think. I don't know, just because we've only received bus passes in the 2 years I've been here. We've only received them twice. Once was a year and a half ago, and once was 6 months ago. So I can't say for sure what would be best. I mean, first come, first serve scares me, because there are organizations out there that are bigger, like United Way, Douglas County, LCS, the Salvation Army. We serve about 100 to 200 clients a month, and they're all the same. A lot of times they're the same clients, so we may not go through them as quick. Yeah. So first come, first serve, I think, just kind of scares me. But if it's best for the organization, then that makes sense, but it just scares me.
Okay. And it sounds like then if it was a frequent enough basis of application, then you wouldn't have to guess too far out in the future. So, I mean, that may have to be balanced with staff's capacity for how often you're willing to process applications and kind of compare with what's available. So, Adam, from your perspective, is yearly, pretty easy, or would quarterly be fine as well, or is quarterly a little bit too intense to suddenly take on a new application component here?
Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. Quarterly might be a challenge. I mean, I guess I anticipate, again, like, with more knowledge, I imagine we'd probably, whenever we put out a call for them, whether it was once annually or quarterly, we would probably anticipate receiving requests that exceeded our capacity. So each of those would require some formula for determining who gets what.
Could you do that proportional idea kind of posed earlier, where if you had requests that total 20,000 passes and you only had 10,000, then every organization, regardless of their size, gets 50% of what they requested? That seems equitable to me, but I'm not an expert in this stuff, so I don't know.
Well, until we hit the cap, right? I mean, that's the we still have the cap. So I don't know that
Right.
we could just do 50% of their requests. It'd have to be in relation to what we actually have total to offer.
I think that's what I meant. Sorry, I was using the wrong numbers, but what is it, 2,500 passes available this year?
This year, yeah.
Or, sorry, $2,500 worth of passes.
Correct.
So if there were $5,000 worth of allocations requested, then could you just do, say each of those organizations gets $50 because you know what your cap is and you know what the total request is, and you can say, well, I can fulfill 50% to all of you, which would be the alternative versus whoever gets there first gets 100% and whoever doesn't get there first gets 0%.
Yes, that is one. Yeah, that is one way we could do that.
Is that something other committee members will be interested in, or is that a little bit too radical here?
Lance Fay, Vice Chair. I think trying to do something like that quarterly would require a lot of extra coordination and work. Maybe semi-annually, maybe?
Yeah, I was going to throw that one out as well.
Maybe be possible. The other thing is I'm looking at the total amount and that being significantly down this year, and in a year where there may be exceptional need, should we make a request for an additional percent, or, is that a possibility even? I don't know. I haven't really had a chance to really research this very much, so I'm kind of.
I was hoping to address that with the other thing I brought up, which was, when you have a year of extreme need, which will be 2021, that happens to come right after a year of dramatically decreased fare box recovery. It seems like that's an unfortunate flaw of the using the prior year's fare box recovery as the basis for calculation. Whereas if you had a 3 to 5 year rolling average, then these wild swings that you can't see coming wouldn't really affect your allocation too much. So, if we suddenly said, you know what, actually, it's going to be 1% of the average of 2018, 2019, and 2020, which would probably be closer to, I don't know, 40, maybe $3,900 worth of tickets. Now, that's less than what it would have been if 2020 was a normal year, but it's significantly more than it is currently, given 2020 was kind of a crazy year. So, I don't know, if that's an idea that holds water, then perhaps we could shift the basis of calculation here.
This is Mike Wazakowski. I'm with you on using a rolling average for that calculation. That's the way that a lot of agencies do that kind of forecasting, because like you said, there's no way to predict when a big upswing or a big downswing is going to happen.
Yeah, and I think it's possible that the original ordinance probably did factor in the idea of, multi-year economic downturn, something like a 2014, like a 2008 to 2012 thing. But I think a single particularly hard hit year during an otherwise economic time of growth was maybe not anticipated. And I don't think any of us really thought how much of a wrench in our gears this was going to be. So that kind of amendment to the language could kind of future-proof us if this kind of thing ever happened again, where suddenly you can't really ride the bus.
This is Mike Wazakowski, PTAC Chair. Just like note, we have like 5 minutes left before we need to adjourn. Are there any motions for changes to the policy that we need to make?
I can try. Nick Kuzmiak, PTAC member. I would motion that we direct staff to consider the following changes to the ticket allocation policy. Number one, change the prior year calculation basis of fare box recovery to a 3-year rolling average of fare box recovery. Number two, it'll come to me. When was it? Designate a semi-annual application period for applying organizations, so that there's not a first come first served basis anymore, and allocate available dollars based on the percentage of request versus the percentage of available tickets. And item 3, better publicize the existence of the program. Do we need to modify that motion? Did that all make sense?
I am going to summarize it. So there are 3 components to this motion that Nick has proposed. First is to change from using last year's fair returns as the basis to a 3-year rolling average, meaning the previous 3 years. Second is to change to a semi-annual application period for funds, including proportional returns based on how many applications have been put in, how much money is available. And the third component is to better publicize the program. Unknown how to do that. Is there a second to this motion?
That's Vice Chair, I second.
So before we go all the way in, since there is an acute need this year and there may be in the future, is it possible to increase from 1% to 2%, or is that a whole nother discussion with the finances? I was kind of hesitating to put that in just because it's
I'd argue different. If we do that to 2 years or to 2%, we should make that only for this year, and maybe as like a one-time stop, and then going into 2022 forward, we do the 3-year rolling average at 1%.
Okay. Would it be possible to recommend something like that for the city commission and say, this isn't necessarily a part of what our exact recommendations are, but we think you should maybe look at it if there's some kind of funding mechanism just for this year? Because I don't think that would require change to the policy necessarily.
So Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager, I will provide a little clarity maybe on those funds. So providing free passes may reduce revenue, but it's not money we're paying out. You know, like we don't have to find funds to buy these passes. We're just not getting revenue for them. So if that's something that PTAC desires, I think that can be part of the proposed policy change. It's not new money we'd have to find. We would just look ahead towards our future budgets, and if we realize that we're not making as much revenue based on this policy, that may impact our future budget, and you know, if that percentage you know, starts to impact us too much to where we would have to reduce service or something like that, we could take another look at it. The dollars we're looking at in comparison to our total budget, I mean, I think we have a little flexibility there, but that's kind of how that money works. We're not like buying these passes from ourselves. We're just not making money from them.
But this is money that is needed for paying the operations, right?
Correct. So over time, if we're making less and less revenue, that could lead to service reductions or fewer amenities going out or things like that.
But since farebox recovery is what, 10%-ish, then 2% of 10% is pretty minuscule for the overall operating budget, I would assume. So, I mean, even if there does need to be some reduced service, it would be pretty negligible, I'm assuming.
It would be something to keep an eye on, but I mean, I think you're right that the percentages are not huge.
Obviously, just a PTAC member. Adam, I just had one quick question, because a lot of this has to do with the Lawrence Winter Shelter. I know we're wrapping up, but the Lawrence Winter Shelter is only expected to go through the end of March. Is that right? And then they're supposed to resume normal transit patterns?
Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. That's my understanding. The other way that program might work is they might just, if this policy is not fulfilling their transportation need, they might just need to bulk purchase passes out of that program. That might be a cost of that program, is that they're purchasing passes. So that's another angle, I guess, to think about if we're not able to provide them for free.
Excuse me, PTAC committee member. So in that case, Mike, if it's possible to amend my motion to include a fourth part to double the percentage allocated from 1% to 2%, I think not only for the winter shelter, which may be a temporary thing, but for factoring in the fact that other organizations are going to start applying for this now, and it'd be nice to have some more stuff available.
I'd accept that as a friendly amendment. Do you want it to be as a permanent change from 1% to 2%, or?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so we have 4 components to this motion now. First is to change from using a 1-year amount to a 3-year rolling average amount. Second is to change from first come, first served to a semi-annual application period with proportional allocation of passes handed out. Third is to advise the city to better publicize this program. And fourth is to increase the allocation of money from the fare box from 1% to 2% for calculations of how much money is available. Lance, are you still good with that being as a second?
The 2% for this year, I'm not certain about future years. I'm not 100% sure whether 2% is necessary for future years. Does that make sense? I feel like this year is an exception to the rule, an exceptional need. I don't know if 2% is necessary for future years.
Lance, I would say the only reason I included that is not so much that this year is an anomaly, but because this program has been under-publicized, and it's possible that organizations like the Ballard Center for August Works, that, that's not the only one in town. There's going to be a lot more applicants now that this is common knowledge. So instead of everybody getting short-changed, it might be necessary to free up additional funds for it.
Is there a second for this amended motion to include up to 2%?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor for a vote unless someone else wants discussion on this before we vote. Is there any discussion before we vote? Okay, Serena, would you please take a vote?
Okay, this is Serena Pearson. I will go through the list. Freddie Gibb. Are you there?
Vote in favor.
Okay. Lance Fahey,
Yes.
Logan Stewart,
Yay.
yay. August Rudisell,
Yay.
Mike Wazakowski,
Yay.
Nick Kuzmiak,
Yay.
Alan Ackland. Oh, he's gone.
Yep, looks like he departed.
He left. Natalie Yoza. Are you there, Natalie?
I don't see her on the attendance roster anymore either.
Okay. And Bill Wilson.
He departed, I know.
Well, that's 6 out of 9.
Is that
People were
quorum?
absent.
Yeah, that's enough. That passes.
Okay.
Okay, so we will be presenting recommendations to the city at the soonest possible convenience, Adam, to change the policy.
So Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. I think what I'd like to do is draft these changes and bring them back to you in February. We could take them to the commission right after that, but unless you, do I have trust to make these changes and get it on commission prior to circling back with this group, I suppose, is my question.
Sorry, I don't know where I was and my Fitbit didn't even.
I think we were pretty clear in what the guidelines should be, so yeah, I move that that you present it as soon as possible.
Okay, will do.
Okay. Well, that is the end of our regular agenda items. Is there anyone who wants to mention a future agenda work session item to add for February?
Nick Kuzmiak, PTAC member. I'll try to be brief. I remember about a year or so ago, we got a presentation from First Transit regarding the idea of mobility as a service, which was in the process of getting started up. I haven't heard about that for a while, but I remember it being quite interesting, and had a lot of contacts who were interested in that as well. So I'd be curious to hear on the progress of how mobility as a service is kind of coming along?
So Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. There are, they continue to work on that app. One of the things I'll say about mobility as a service is mobility as a service is not an app.
Right. It's just like the concept.
Yeah, it is a.
But there was a first transit thing.
You know, an app is the thing that pulls different mobility modes together, allows you to take multimodal trips using a single app or planning out a multimodal trip with a single app. There continues to be work from folks at First Transit in getting that app beta functional here in Lawrence so we can test it out. One of the challenges for us is we don't have that many alternatives for them to link into. You know, we don't have bike share, we don't have scooter share. We've got pretty limited ride-hailing services. So the value add of a mobility as a service app is pretty low right now. So staff has, supported them continuing to work on that. We've certainly put our energy a lot more into route redesign, transit facility, electric buses, some of those projects, just because of the potential value for it. We don't have a whole lot of pieces to plug into it at this point. So that's kind of where we sit.
Okay. Well, thanks. In that case, I don't really need to see that on the future agenda. That makes sense.
Thank you, Nick. Any other PTAC members with future agenda work session items they'd like to add?
Sorry, me again. I'm going to try to make this as fast as I can. I know we're over time. So I was, until last week, the chair of the Multimodal Transportation Commission. And for all those of you who don't know me yet, and I don't know you yet, just FYI, that's me. I'm not the chair anymore, but I am still pretty involved in it. So if you are interested in transportation as a general thing in Lawrence, feel free to reach out to me and, let's chat. I also want to note that the previous meeting that we had last Monday was a new idea for a session where we invited members of the public and also city staff to kind of share their thoughts on how transportation affects them, how the commission affects them. For transit, we had Lance Fahey and also Adam was there to kind of share their thoughts, and we had a pretty good discussion based around that. So the video minutes are available online if you're interested in seeing what we went over. But otherwise, basically the end goal is that we're looking to kind of improve our relationship between MMTC and PTAC.
Thank you, Nick. Any other future agenda work session items to add? Any other items from PTAC members? Okay, transit staff, do you have anything to add?
Not at this time, no.
Okay, well then that wraps up our agenda for today. Our next meeting is scheduled for the second Monday of February, which is the 8th. Looking forward to seeing you all there. And at this time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Does anyone else want to adjourn?
Second. Very good.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. And we will see you on the 8th. Have a great night.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
See you.